Yo, later one today. Got quite busy, but let's waste no more time. Let's get straight into it. Lose/win. Some people are programmed the other way. Lose/win. I lose, you win. Go ahead, have your way with me. Step on me again, everyone does. I'm a loser, I've always been a loser. I'm a peacemaker, I'll do anything to keep peace. Lose/win is worse than win/lose because it has no standards, no demands, no expectations, no vision. People who think lose/win are usually quick to please or appease. They seek strength from popularity or acceptance. They have little courage to express their own feelings and convictions and are easily intimidated by the ego strength of others. In negotiation, lose/win is seen as capitulation, given in or given up. In leadership style, it's permissiveness or indulgence. Lose/win means being a nice guy, even if nice guy finished last. Win/lose, people love lose/win people because they can feed on them. They love their weaknesses, they take advantage of them. Such weaknesses complement their strengths. But the problem is that lose/win people bury a lot of feelings, and unexpressed feelings never die. They're buried alive and come forth later in uglier ways. Psychosomatic illnesses, particularly of the respiratory, nervous, and circulatory systems, often are the reincarnation of cumulative circuit resentment, deep disappointment, and disillusionment repressed by the lose/win mentality. Disproportionate range or anger, overreaction to minor provocation, and cynicism are other embodiments of suppressed emotion. People who are constantly repressing, not transcending feelings toward a higher meaning, find that it affects the quality of their self-esteem, eventually the quality of their relationships with others. Both win/lose and lose/win are weak positions based on personal insecurities. In the short run, win/win will precede more results because it draws on the often considerable strengths and talents of the people at the top. Lose/win is weak and chaotic from the outset. Many executive managers and parents swing back and forth as if on a pendulum from win/lose in consideration to lose/win indulgence. When they can't stand confusion and lack of structure, direction, expectation, and discipline any longer, they swing back to win/lose until guilt undermines their resolve and drives them back to lose/win, until anger and frustration drive them back to win/lose again. Lose/lose. When two win-lose people get together, that is when two determined, stubborn, ego-invested individuals interact. The result will be lose-lose. Both will lose, both will become indicative and want to get back or get even, blind to the fact that murder is suicide, that revenge is a two-edged sword. I know of a divorce in which the husband was directed by the judge to sell the assets and turn over half the proceeds to his ex-wife. In compliance, he sold a car worth over $10,000 for $50 and gave $25 to the wife. When the wife protested, the court clerk checked on the situation and discovered that the husband was proceeding in the same manner systematically throughout all of the assets. Some people become so centered on an enemy, so totally obsessed with the behavior of another person, that they become blind to everything except their desire for that person to lose, even if it means losing themselves. Lose/lose is a philosophy of adversarial conflict and the philosophy of war. Lose/lose is always the philosophy of the highly dependent person without inner direction, who is miserable and thinks everyone else should be too. If nobody ever wins, perhaps being a loser isn't so bad. Win. Another common alternative is simply to think win. People with the win mentality don't necessarily don't necessarily want someone else to lose. That's irrelevant. What matters is that they get what they want. When there is no sense of contest or competition, win is probably the most common approach in everyday negotiation. A person with a win mentality thinks in terms of securing his own ends and leaves it to another to secure theirs. Which option is best? Of these 5 philosophies discussed so far, win/win, win/lose, lose/win, lose/lose, and win, which is the most effective? The answer, it depends. If you win a football game, that means the other team loses. If you work in a regional office that is miles away from another regional office, and you don't have any functional relationship between the offices, you may want to compete in a win/lose situation to stimulate business. However, you would not want to set up a win/lose situation like the race to Bermuda contest within a company, or in a situation where you need cooperation among people or groups of people to achieve maximum success. If you value relationship and the issue isn't really that important, you may want to go for lose/win in some circumstances to generally affirm the other person. What I want isn't as important to me as my relationship with you. Let's do it your way this time. You may also go for lose/win if you feel the expense of time and effort to achieve a win of any kind would violate other higher values. Maybe it just isn't worth it. These are circumstances in which you would want to win and you wouldn't be highly concerned with the relationship of that win to others. If your child's life were in danger, for example, you might be peripherally concerned about other people and circumstances, but saving that life would be supremely important. The best choice then depends on reality. The challenge is to read that reality accurately and not to translate win/lose or other scripting into every situation. Most situations, in fact, are part of an interdependent reality, and then win-win is really the only viable alternative of the 5. Win/lose is not viable because although I appear to win in a confrontation with you, your feelings, your attitude towards me, and our relationship have been affected. If I am a supplier to your company, for example, and I win on my terms in a particular negotiation, I might get what I want now, but will you come to me again? My short-term win will really be a long-term lose if I don't get your BP business. So an interdependent win/lose is really lose-lose in the long run. If we come up with lose/win, you may appear to get what you want for the moment. But how would that affect my attitude about working with you? About fulfilling the contract. I may not feel as anxious to please you. I may carry battle scars with me until any future negotiations. My attitude about you and your company may be spread as I associate with others in the industry. So we're into lose/lose again. Lose-lose obviously isn't viable in any context. And if I focus on my own win and don't even consider your point of view, there's no basis for any kind of productive relationship. In the long run, if it isn't a win for both of us, we both lose. That's why win-win is the only real alternative interdependent realities. I worked with a client once, the president of a large chain of retail stores, who said, "Stefan, this win-win idea sounds good, but is it so idealistic? The tough, realistic business world isn't like that. There's win/lose everywhere, and if you're not out there playing the game, you just can't make it." All right, I said, "Try going for win-lose with your customers. Is that realistic?" "Well, no," he replied. "Why not? I'd lose my customers." "Then go for lose-win. Give the store away. Is that realistic?" "No. No margin, no mission." As we considered the various alternatives, win-win appeared to be the only true realistic approach. "I guess that's true with customers," he admitted, "but not with suppliers." "You are the customer of the supplier," I said. "Why doesn't the same principle apply?" "We'll recently renegotiate our lease agreements with the small operators and owners," and he said, "we went in with a win-win attitude. We were open, reasonable, conciliatory, but they saw the position as being soft and weak, and they took us to the cleaners." "Well, why did you go for lose-win?" I asked. "We didn't. We went for win-win." "I thought you said they took you to the cleaners." "They did. In other words, you lost." "That's right. and they won. That's right. So what's that called? When he realized that what he had called win-win was really lose-win, he was shocked. And as we examine for long-term impact of that lose/win, the suppressed feelings that trampled values, the resentments that seethed under the surface of the relationship, we agreed that it was really a lose for both parties in the end. If this man had had a real win/win attitude, he would have stayed longer in the communication process, listened to the mall owner more, then expressed his point of view with more courage. He would have continued in the win-win spirit until a solution was reached they both felt good about. But that solution, that third alternative, would have been synergistic, probably something neither of them had thought of on his own. I'll take a pause there, but good little bit of insight towards the end there, especially when it came to, in the example that he provided, where he was saying that he came in with a win-win mentality, but the way that he eventually, ended off on the deal was a lose-win. And sometimes that can really happen, where you do things with really good intentions, but you kind of sell yourself short, and you end up being in a position where others can take advantage of you, and it ends up being a lose-win. And I wish it kind of talked about more about how to step away from that, but I can only assume that it has to do with more having more courage. He did kind of talk about it, staying in the communication process longer, listen to the mall operators more, but I think it's more than just that. I think it's more than communication. I think it's more than just listening. I think those are very important roles or important things to consider, but I think it has something to do with yourself. What is your fight? What is your mentality look like from a personal aspect? If you get one no, or if you get a rejection, what are you going to do about it? Or just going to let it happen? Or are you going to continue fighting for what you have in mind is a win-win? So that's one thing. Another thing I wanted to talk about was in the example of which option is best, and as I want to talk about it from a friendship standpoint. Sometimes when you're in the heat of a moment, or let's say your friend is acting in such a way that you really don't want to jeopardize the relationship. And quite frankly, this could be in work, this could be your family, this could be within your company, like I said, or with your friends. But if you're stuck in a situation where it's jeopardizing the relationship, and you value that relationship more than trying to get your point across or trying to be right in that situation, then sometimes taking the loss is a lot better in the long run. And I think this is where just the win aspect comes into part. Maybe in the overall scheme of things, or looking from outside in, you might have lost, but internally you said, hey, I won, because I value this relationship. That other person, or the person across from me, is not seeing that right now, but I truly value this relationship. I don't want to put it on the line and perhaps even lose our relationship because of the situation that we're in now. So that's also very important to realize too, is that sometimes we have to take the loss. Sometimes we, even from the example I was saying earlier about with the lease and the owner coming in with a win-win mentality, is that he took the loss. Now, how do we learn from it? Now, going back to the situation about the friends, is that sometimes you just have to take the loss, knowing, hey, I really value this relationship. I want to continue it. And within myself, I know that I won. I know that I took a win for the both of us, whether or not you realize it or not in the very moment. So something to keep in mind for sure. But I think when I first read this, and it proposed the question of what is the best option, I thought of win. But what I would also say is that I think overall, a win-win is always going to be beneficial than just win. So yeah, we'll end it off there. Go a little bit, go win the day, and go win something with somebody else that's also will win from it too. Yeah.